Hello, my name is Daniel Howard, and today I would like to talk to you about the change in aviation over Europe during and after the eruption of the Icelandic volcano Eyjafjallajökull. And first off, I would like to apologize if I did not get the pronunciation correct. I am not a native Icelandic speaker, however, I did have a native Icelandic speaker help me with this pronunciation. A little bit of background to the eruption. Eyjafjallajökull erupted on April 14th, 2010. The volcano erupted with such force that it created an ash cloud which shut down air travel over many places in Europe for days. The volcano had been dormant for over 200 years before a small series of eruptions, and then continuous erupting and ash. Eyjafjallajökull is an ice-covered stratovolcano by classification and stands about 1,665 meters high. An ash cloud was sent as high as 9.5 kilometers into the atmosphere, and prevailing winds blew it southeast into the UK, continental Europe, and reached as far south as Morocco. The entire eruption alone causes a cancellation of more than 100,000 flights in a week and costed the airline companies an estimated 1.7 billion US dollars. The eruption of Eyjafjallajökull was considered medium on the volcanic eruption scale, but still had tremendous effects on Europe. The ash spewed by the volcano made flight unsafe, ash a daily concern, and stopped the movement of a great deal of people and supplies. These are the meteorological conditions at the time of the eruption. The depiction of the image is a depiction of wind conditions that carried the ash cloud so far from Iceland. This is how it was able to spread over continental Europe. This figure here shows the weather system configuration at 500 millibars level for the days April 15th, April 18th, April 24th, and May 7th of 2010. So just general maps showing how the atmosphere was laid out at the time. This is the total effect of the ash cloud. The figure here shows the spread and the entire effect from the ash cloud from Eyjafjallajökull. And this is based on data from London's Volcanic Ash Advisory Center website. All the data that is plotted on this map. When we talk about the spread of the ash cloud, these two satellite images come in handy. These are infrared images of the eruption. For reference, the black is the worst part of the ash. The red is the next to worse, and then the yellow is moderate. These images are separated by a few days, and you can see how the wind conditions took the ash cloud into Europe. This is a satellite image where you can actually see the plume of ash coming out of the top of Eyjafjallajökull. And it is in full color. The ash cloud spread mostly into the UK and then into northern continental Europe. But this image shows the extent of the airspace shut down and or having some flight restriction. As you can see, all flights are marked on this map and the popular routes that they use to fly. Well, in the red zones, which is where the ash spread, you can see there is little to no flying activity. This map shows also that ash was dispersed in the upper atmosphere, not only above Europe, but back towards North America as well. In the slide, you can see that this is ash that has been dispersed at an elevation of 20,000 feet. And the zones marked in red are no-fly zones because of the great risks to the airplane. So, why is volcanic ash so bad for airplanes? The picture below is a private pilot flying to observe the ash plume of Eyjafjallajökull. You can see how the ash is drifting south into continental Europe, so you can tell he is on the north side of the mountain. Volcanic ash is made of tiny shards of rock which resemble glass. This makes ash damaging and abrasive as an aircraft flies through it. It hurts the wings, and it can cover windows, and it also messes with aircraft instrumentation, such as clogging up the pitot tube, which measures wind speed or your airspeed. In some instances, it can stall a perfectly fine working engine. Volcanic ash erodes the fans on the front of a jet engine, and that will make them lose efficiency. And once inside the engine, this melts and turns into a molten glass type substance that, when the engine is completely gunked up, will cause a flame out. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, has recorded 83 aircraft volcanic ash incidents up to 2008 since they began recording. 8 of those led to temporary engine failure, but no accidents have occurred. All planes were able to restart some or all of their engines and land safely. This right here is the inside of a jet engine from a 747 that was involved in a volcanic incident in 1983, showing a little bit of what damage can be done. So how was aviation affected by the eruption? With many of Europe's airspaces with a volcanic ash risk, it was deemed too unsafe to fly by the Civil Aviation Authority, CAA, in the United Kingdom. Over 300 airports in 24 different countries closed for about a week. Over 100,000 flights were canceled, having an effect on 7 million passengers and an estimated loss of $1.7 billion US. Initially, after the eruption, the ICAO guidance for volcanic ash was avoid, 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 which means to just completely avoid volcanic ash. Don't fly near it or around it. It's just not good for the plane. Which is what led to the shutdown of so many airports and airspaces. Europe was not ready for such an event at the time. In order for the airspace to be reopened, European aviation authorities had to work together to rezone hazardous airspaces and predict and model the movement of the ash cloud. The European aviation authorities devised a system that says that an airspace has a low ash quantity when there is a concentration of less than 2 to 4 milligrams per meter cubed. The air needed to have a low concentration before airplanes could be safely flown through it. This means that per cubic meter of air, there had to be a concentration of 2 to 4 milligrams of ash for flight to be deemed safe. Much of Iceland, the United Kingdom, and continental Europe did not meet this level for safe flight. This means that many people needed to come together to solve the issue in the best ways that they could. So, what steps are being taken to ensure future aviation safety? The Eyjafjallajökull eruption opened many eyes to volcanic activity and long-term ash plumes and the risks that they pose to aviation. The eruption prompted the ICAO to form the International Volcanic Ash Task Force, or the IVATF, which has the task of defining hazardous airspace and how to manage risk in the area. The eruption caused an airline, EasyJet, to lose $55 million in US. So, to help an ash avoidance event in the event of future eruptions, EasyJet collaborated with Airbus and Nikarnika Aviation to design an airborne volcanic object imaging detector, or AVOID, or AVOID. The purpose of AVOID is to detect volcanic ash or material up to 100 kilometers away from the system and to better help pilots avoid volcanic situations. The photo at the top shows a prototype AVOID system mounted on the front of the aircraft for testing. It uses ultraviolet and UV sensors to look for the ash. How does AVOID work? This image comes from EasyJet to show how the AVOID system works. 1. The ash cam. 2 digital cameras tuned to pick red and blue infrared light. Ash cams pick up a stronger red signal, signaling the presence of ash clouds up to 60, 62, or 100 kilometers ahead, 60 miles. Data is beamed in the cockpit, who alters his course to fly safely past the ash. And then information is transmitted to control centers and shared with other planes and airliners so that they can avoid the ash too. The AVOID system is in use at some airports and is equipped to some airplanes. However, it is not an instrument that all aircraft carry. Most airplanes will still need to rely on weather forecasting and avoidance of known ash areas. EasyJet says that these airplanes that they have designed could scout airspaces after an eruption to ensure that it is safe for flight using the AVOID system. Have any other steps been taken to prepare for another large-scale eruption? Eyjafjallajökull eruption caused aviation leaders in Europe to begin a program called Volcanic Ash Crisis Exercises, or VOLCEX, to help emergency responders, pilots, and all in the aviation industry. In VOLCEX, ICAO implements a yearly crisis exercise by activating the European Aviation Crisis Coordination Cell, and the EVITA is tested. EVITA is a crisis communication system. These yearly VOLCEX tests do not just cover Eyjafjallajökull eruptions, but also tests scenarios of potential eruptions of the other volcanoes of Iceland, the Azores Islands, and the volcanoes of Italy. It should also be noted that these tests do not interfere with normal commercial flight. Eyjafjallajökull's impact on the theme of geography, movement. When talking about the movement theme of geography, we talk about how human beings move, not only physically, but ideologically. The airplane is one of the biggest tools when it comes to how far humans can move and how quickly they can. It's one of the backbones of globalization. One person can be on a side of a globe and in less than 24 hours be on the other. With Eyjafjallajökull being one of the largest aviation shutdowns since World War II, it put an abrupt halt to movement of people and the loss of a lot of revenue. The volcanic eruption of Eyjafjallajökull will be one we will remember as a long time. If not for the effects it had on transportation, it'll be for its funny or impossible to pronounce sounding name. Most aircraft today still use the avoid concept when it comes to volcanic ash, but pilots now have better instrumentation and forecasting to help them stay safe. The Eyjafjallajökull eruption is scary because it was technically a medium-scale eruption, but many of the procedures that European aviation authorities have adopted will ensure that if another volcano decides to go, human beings will not be stuck flightless. And in conclusion and final, even though the eruption of Eyjafjallajökull caused havoc, destruction, and the loss of revenue, after the lessons that have been learned and the research done, I believe the aviation industry is likely more capable of handling another disaster like this in the future, and hopefully the movement of humans will not be infringed. And thank you for listening.